Hello and welcome to Romance Report, a podcast by Shana Tibi, Matchmaker and Date Strategist. And I am back live with the first Romance Report in a while. So this is exciting to me. You know, as a matchmaker, I talk to so many people who are looking for love and preparing to get married. And we definitely talk about challenging life events and challenging things in their situation of what led them to looking to find love. What stage are they in? Whether they're looking for love the first time, or maybe they are divorced or widowed and they're looking for love a second time around. But something that we don't always talk about that is very important is financial transparency, planning, and what happens beyond the wedding. So today, welcome to A Life Beyond the Wedding, Prenups, Planning, and Financial Transparency. And I'm going to introduce my amazing guest, Lisa Segelov, who is an expert in this field of family law and real estate law, and they're very connected. So I'm going to bring her on stage.
Hi,
Lisa.
Shana. So excited to be here.
I am so happy you're here today because I've known you for a while. And anytime people have questions about what to do, where to go, about anything law related, you're the first person that people think of. So
thank you so much. Thank you. It's great to be here. And we've got a full program ahead.
You are right. So why don't we hop right in? Well, before that, why don't you tell us a little bit about the type of law you do, and then we're going to start with what it means for a relationship.
Great. Well, I have a law office that I started a long time ago, 35 years ago in Ramat Gan, and I have partners and I have paid lawyers that work for me, and I specialize in family law in the greater sense. So not only divorce and all the yucky stuff that comes with that, but I also do prenups and I also do cohabitation agreements, and in the wider area, estates and wills. Mm-hmm. And because family law goes hand in hand with real estate law, I also do a lot of real estate law.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you. And again, happy you're here and thanks for your time. And I think people are going to get a lot out of this. So why don't we just jump right in? Here's something that happens all the time. Someone meets, a couple meet, they start dating, they get excited. You know, there's a lot of butterflies, there's excitement, there's the whole, beginning of falling in love kind of process. But then the real conversations start, and one thing that I think people avoid is financial transparency. Some people might come into a relationship. Someone might make more than the other. Someone might have more debt than the other. Somebody might have more assets than the other. How do you even start this conversation? Do you have any pointers or what is important to talk about before saying I do in terms of financial transparency?
I think when a couple are going to start a life together, and whether it's their first marriage or perek bet, it's really important to have this conversation. It's not only a conversation to have in the case that it doesn't work out, in the case you're going to separate. It's that there are many different things that can happen to you in life. A partner can, has v'chalila, get sick, ad mei esrim, maybe they're not going to be there, or it's not going to work out and you're going to separate. And there are going to be a number of scenarios. You may have kids, you may not have kids, you may have kids from a former marriage, you may have one partner may have stayed home while the other partner had an enormous jump in their career, but you both started from without assets, really at the beginning at a young age. There are a lot of variations, and these are issues that I deal with every single day. A lot of people, if they had the conversation and had prepared beforehand, would be in a totally different situation. than they are when they actually face a situation like this, which can bring a lot of heartache and it can be very expensive. So my takeaway is that before you jump into that most exciting period of your life where you're getting married, unfortunately, you have to sit down and have the hard conversation about issues that, at this situation, you really don't want to talk about. It's a bit like going to the dentist, you're putting it off, kicking the can down the road, don't want to do this, but it's really, really important. And
Great.
I want to tell you a very nice story that I had the other day.
Ooh.
Where one of my clients, well, it started off that he actually got divorced about a year and a half ago, and he has a little child. And for different reasons, their marriage didn't work out. And when we finished at the Rabbanut, the religious courts, he said to me in a very, very sad way, Lisa, I really don't think I'm going to get married again. And it really was heartbreaking, a young man in his early 30s. Anyway, a few weeks ago, he called me and said, Lisa, guess what? I found someone. I found another love. And
Nice.
we're going to get married soon. But
Wow.
this time I want to do a prenup. So it's a beautiful story because he understood how important it was to have these difficult conversations before he jumped into a second marriage.
Yes.
And B, he's in love again. So,
oh my God.
So
that's amazing.
That's my nice story for the day.
Nice. I love
so
it.
We will have more conversation further in the conversation, more stories. But
Sure.
I thought I would open with a nice story like that.
I love that story. Mazel tov to him. And yeah, having the hard conversations pays off. I'll tell you, I'm going to share too. So, when people decide to get married, as you know, there's so many hard conversations that they need to have. Everybody, listen up, daters. Everybody comes with their own set of issues. Everybody does. And you have to decide, are these the kind of issues that I can handle? So I'll tell you a little quick story about me before I got married. So I have a second degree, master's social work, degree. I, American Jewish, grew up in the US. My husband, Israeli, did all the stuff you're supposed to do, with the life cycles of an Israeli guy. And we ended up meeting in California. Okay. And when we met, he's a problem solver. He takes care of things when they need to get taken care of. And when we met, I had to let him know, listen, I have school debt. Like I still owed on my, you take a loan, a student, a financial aid loan. And sometimes in the US, they live with you forever, but in my situation, I told him, here, he's like, I have no debt. I pay everything. I have no debt at all. I'm like, okay, well, here's my student loans. So how did I know? Number one, that this was a guy to marry. The first thing he did is he's like, we're paying off your student loans. This is the first thing we're doing. So, that's a conversation we had. It could have turned bad. It could have turned, who knows? But we had that conversation, and that was the first thing we did after, getting married. And yeah, I don't know, people, when they get married, you join assets, things happen. But to come into a marriage knowing like this is the first thing we handled, pretty good. Yeah. So
that's a great story. A great story. And I just want to build on that and say how important it is to have these conversations and then act on these conversations. So these conversations that we have are generally when people want to do a prenup agreement. And a prenup agreement is a prenuptial agreement. It's agreement you do before you get married. And in Israel, you can come and do it before a lawyer, and it must be signed by a notary, and it must be before the chuppah. So anytime before the chuppah, you can do that prenup agreement. And there are very important issues that we cover in a prenup agreement, which I'll explain in a few minutes. And if you don't manage to do it before you get married, but you feel that you do still want to do some sort of financial agreement, you can,
Mhm.
as a married couple, do a financial agreement.
Okay.
Um, and things may change during a marriage that you want to do a financial agreement, i.e., someone may inherit something and you're going to
Mhm.
put that into a joint asset. But if you do a financial agreement after you get married, if you do it after you get married, then you must
Okay.
have the court's approval, the family court in Israel's approval. So
Okay.
it's never too late. Okay. It's better to probably do a prenup before you get married. Um, but it's possible to do a financial agreement once you are married with court approval.
Great. Let's address the elephant in the room, prenup. People hear this word and they freak out. They're like, "Oh my God, does he love me? Does he think we're getting divorced?" And it's so stigmatizing, but it shouldn't be at all. Our concepts of a prenup come from soap operas, telenovelas. They come from sitcoms where, the word prenup turns the relationship sometimes into a direction of questioning the love. But that's not what it is. Let's dispel rumors of a prenup and say what they're actually good for and why people should have them.
Well, I agree with you. Everyone thinks a prenup and gets into a huge panic. And does he love me? Does she love me? Why are you doing this? It's not going to happen to us. But let's be adults in the room and let's talk about the real issues, okay, and life. Now,
Mm-hmm.
a prenup can pretty much talk about everything, except it can't talk about children. Okay, you
Okay.
cannot govern what's going to happen with children. So children are left aside, okay, but all the other issues that arise in a relationship where you're running a joint household, they're the issues that we address in a prenup. So let's start with the first issue. And the first issue is a very special issue for Jewish law because
Okay.
in Israel, what governs divorce between two Jews, okay, or two people of the same religion, what are the religious courts. So two people that are Jewish in Israel must get divorced by the religious courts. Now there is a process, and in some cases, not a lot of cases, but enough cases to make this a big issue,
Okay.
is that you can refuse to give someone what's called a get, a Jewish
Mhm.
divorce. And that, especially for a man giving it to a woman, and that really is a complicated process where there is a refusal. So a Jewish woman can't really get on with her life.
Yeah.
So that is the basis, okay? One of the most important issues, okay, to sign a prenup, to make sure, okay, that there are provisions, A, that govern separation, and B, that there are clauses in there for a penalty payments, okay, in the
Okay.
event that a get is not issued. And this is an important point. I think one of the most important points. It's also a point that most rabbis in the Zohar strain, okay, if you're getting married, Orthodox, are now making people, both in America and in Israel, sign
Okay.
prenup to avoid this issue of not being able to get a get. That's the
Okay.
first thing. That's the first thing, and it's a really important issue. The second issue is how do we deal with property, okay,
Mm.
during a marriage?
Okay.
So you're starting your life together, and into the marriage, one or two, both sides may bring property that they A, already own, or B, have been gifted or
Yes.
inherited. So we need to make sure what happens with this property in the case of separation. Lots of it is family money, so the family don't want it to go to the partner in the case of separation.
Right.
So we have to make the relevant provisions in a prenup agreement. And the other thing is what happens to the money that either party earns, okay, or the assets that they acquire during this
Right.
joint relationship. Often I get clients that come to me, okay, and unfortunately, there are a lot more women than men, even though the tables are changing. In the way that the woman stayed home, put her career on hold for 10, 15 years, had, 3 or 4 children, while the man's career went, zoom, okay, to the
Yeah.
sky.
Yes.
Often in high tech, where they've given options, where there's been a merger, payout, buyout, okay, or that they hold a lot of options that are waiting for the companies to be taken over, or like simply the man's salary just increased exponentially while the woman stayed home or did part-time work or didn't develop her career.
Right.
So what do you do in a case like that? Are there going to be special provisions for the goodwill of the wife who stayed home? Or it
Right.
can be the man that stayed home, but it's more often these days still the woman that stays home. So these are all issues that we can deal with. And especially when a couple are a bit older, okay, and have already finished university and learning, and they're starting to establish their careers, we can really see if one person is going to have much more income in the future, or if they've decided, okay, that one partner will stay home and look after the children while the other's career will develop. So this is an important issue to discuss as well.
100%. As a matchmaker, when I interview people and we're looking for their right partner, I like to understand, is this something, do you envision yourself in a traditional type of marriage where it's more the man might be more of the breadwinner and the woman might be more of like the CEO of the home? And then, that is something to take into consideration, because if she's supported the home, the children, and then if it ends up in some type of divorce, she did help build his career, in that way. So that's great to know that there are provisions, for women that have invested their life that way. I'm curious, in terms of a prenup, is there a difference, or is it more important, less important, or what are the differences between a prenup for 2 people never married, no kids, or 2 people entering a marriage and it's, paric bet, also known as, second marriage? Is there a difference there?
Okay, that's a really good question. Really good question. And I would have said up to, say, 10 years ago, paric bet was probably more important, because paric bet happens at a later part of your life. So
Right.
you've usually, both people have usually in the relationship have usually worked and managed to save, and or they have assets. Okay.
Right.
And or they have children, okay, which which may not have reached an adult level. They may not reach 18, and therefore they're still paying maintenance, etc., for them.
Right.
So yes, there is a formula. And I recently did someone who is in paric bet. She was a marketing manager and he's a dentist. And they both came to the party. They both came to the marriage with children, and they both came to the party with property. And they both came with a career that had been invested. So, we dived into all those issues, which was very, very important for both of them. So that's what I call a situation where imperative to do a prenup, because I just want to explain, the law says that everything is shared 50-50 between the 2 parties during the period of the marriage. Okay? So you've got a property, he's got a property, the properties you sell, you mix all the money, you buy another property, all the money's mixed.
Mm-hmm.
What's the formula if 5 years down the road you're going to separate? So these are all the complicated issues that we deal with. And I want to say, even people who've fallen in love, they're in their late 20s, early 30s today. It's
Right.
their first marriage. But a lot of people are so successful today, and they have accumulated a career. They've finished university. They've invested in the stock market. They're in high tech. They've got a career. They've got options when they signed on. All of this wasn't really around 15, 20 years ago, but it's
Yeah.
around today. It's around today. And so I see a lot of young couples, 28 plus, into their first marriage, and they already have assets. So
Yeah.
today it's not only Perek Bet, today it's also Perek Aleph that
Wow.
you have to address these issues. Yep.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up, because that's really important to know. It's not only that you have all the wealth you're ever gonna acquire and then you need to protect it. Maybe there's younger people getting married and they need to safeguard, what they're going to build, and a prenup is a great way to do that. Lisa, you use a phrase that I think is really cool, so I want to address it and get more into it. You talk about having like a legal suitcase, okay? And you talk about that. So in addition to the prenup, which we've talked about, what else should a couple entering a marriage consider putting in their legal suitcase? Phrase I love, by the way.
Okay. I also love it. And I think people can really understand it.
Yes.
It doesn't have to, it's not a suitcase. It can be
Right,
it's
right.
more like a document folder.
Sure.
Um, in which every person should have it, irrespective of their age.
Okay.
But especially when you are entering a life cycle event, such as getting married or living together, cohabitation, you need to make sure that A, you have a will.
Okay.
B, you have what's called in Hebrew a yipui koach mitmashech, which in English, depending where you live, is either a continuing power of attorney or enduring power of attorney.
Yes.
And you should have a power of attorney anyway, that is not enduring power of attorney. Let me explain the different documents that should make up your legal suitcase.
Yes.
So a will is important because a will is a governing document of when someone is no longer here. Recently, I had a case where a couple were married 2 years, and unfortunately, the husband was diagnosed with a terminal disease. They had, in that short time they were married, they fortunately had twins, and about 3 months ago, unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 36. But before he passed away, they came to me and they did a will.
Okay.
Which was very, very important to protect his kids and his wife. So a will is really important, and especially in Perek Bet, to think about what you're going to do, maybe you have children from the previous marriage, and then you have you may have enter into a new family, or definitely you've got a new spouse. Those are new considerations. And so your will that you've had all your life may not be the will that you need to have now.
Okay.
And I'll tell you another story that I had a woman who entered her second marriage, a couple very much in love in their 50s.
Nice.
And unfortunately, they didn't do a will, and they didn't do a prenup. And he had 4 children from a previous marriage that didn't like the new spouse. And it was very messy because the Perek Bet marriage, the man had an enormous stroke, which left him paralyzed 2 years into the second marriage.
Oh boy.
And the second wife looked after this her husband, her second husband, for many, many years was his carer, and he eventually passed away, but she was his carer for at least 10 years. Now, when he died, okay, there was no will protecting her. We had to sue the estate, his estate, because he didn't have a will that covered the second marriage.
Wow.
And we did manage to get some money from the estate. But this lady who was a second wife, who literally had given up her life to look after her second husband, at
Okay.
the age of 64, had to enter the workforce again,
Oh,
because
man.
the payout that she received from the estate was not enough to sustain her for her lifetime. So it's very important in life cycle events to look at these documents that are going to govern your life and govern in death, okay? And to make sure that they reflect really what you want at the stage of where you are currently. Another story I had was a couple separated and they got on with their lives, but they never officially got divorced.
Okay.
And they separated. Everyone knew they separated. Eventually, the ex-wife, she went into another relationship, but the man suddenly died at the age of 55.
Okay.
And his will was like 30 years old. So it didn't reflect the fact that he'd separated from his wife and they never got divorced. So
Yeah.
his will gave everything to his wife. Now
Wow.
his children, the understanding was that he really wanted all his children to get it, and not the ex-wife who'd moved on with another partner really wasn't in the equation. But that wasn't reflected in his will. There was something totally different. So the ex-wife did give up some of the property, but
Okay.
she did keep some. And it was definitely not his intention that she would get some. But the ruling document is what is the will. And if you don't change your will, if you don't change your will, it will be the will that exists. And if you don't have a will, it will be according to the statutory order, the order of what exists according to the law.
Okay. Wow. I mean, entering marriage in general, and specifically, as we know, as Jewish people, entering a Jewish marriage is governed by all of our life cycle events are governed by certain laws and rituals and whatnot. So what I'm hearing you say is that include the prenup as part of the Jewish life cycle, of marriage. Include the financial transparency conversation before, and definitely your legal suitcase. Don't delay. Take care of it. And if there are changes, make those changes along the way. So, God forbid something should happen, the people you love are protected and cared for in your absence.
Totally,
Yeah.
because also these documents, that they aren't expensive to do, but
Okay.
if you do not do them and something else happens, and it's you leave someone out of a will, you leave your previous children, it's going to end up in a legal battle after the fact. And that's an expensive and heartbreaking process that you go through,
Yeah,
the families. And it can all be avoided
absolutely.
basically by being on top of on top of
Right.
it all. And like going to the dentist, don't delay. Go every 6 months.
Exactly.
Check your will every 5 years. If you're in a life cycle event, okay,
Yes.
then you make sure that you change everything so it reflects where you are in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love this planning conversation. I love to help people be prepared. Also in my style of matchmaking, it's very bullet points and like, okay, how are we moving from point A to point B? So it sounds like you have natural check marks along the way of what people should do. And I would love to show people, when they have more questions, how they're going to find you and ask you and turn to you for their prenups. God willing, I pass all my engaged couples to you and they
Fabulous.
can, yeah.
It's very exciting to do a prenup because there's an atmosphere between the couple. I don't find that there's any negative feelings. I just find that people want to make sure that they're protected, and I think that there's enough love between a couple that they can come to, and discuss the things that are really important. So I have all of my couples that do prenups walk out of here and smile.
Good.
And hopefully they just put it in a drawer and never have to use it again.
Exactly. It's there for their safety. So Lisa, this is how people can reach you. Lisa at cslaw.co.il, and of course, www.cslawyers.co.il. And Lisa, where could people find you the most on social media? Which platform are you most findable?
I'm findable on LinkedIn. I also write 2 posts a week on LinkedIn about real estate law and about family law and prenups. So they're always an interesting read for someone that wants to follow. And I'm also post them on Facebook, but mainly LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, and just to find you, Lisa Segelov on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll be the one that pops up.
That's correct.
Amazing. Well, I want to do your Lisa's top 3 takeaways on a life beyond the wedding, prenups planning, and financial transparency. And here they are. So Lisa, you said Lisa's top 3 takeaways. 1, life is full of surprises. Be prepared. We talked a lot about that. 2, get your legal suitcase in order. Get it in order. And 3, don't put off those preparatory steps for a rainy day, because according to, some of the stories we heard today, it could backfire. It just, you need to safeguard the people you love. Did I get those right?
100%. You were definitely listening.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Well, it was incredible to have you on today, and I can't wait to share this knowledge with people who are entering relationships for the first or second or more times. And, you can always turn to Lisa for this type of legal advice, and definitely have those conversations, people. Have them. Any of the conversations entering into a marriage, whether it's legal or not, people come with their set of stuff, and you need to know what you're getting into. And if you want to find me, that's me, Shana Tibi, ShanaConnects.com, at Shana Connects on all socials. You can find me. I have a WhatsApp. That's why I communicate with everybody. I have a LinkedIn, all the socials, and a YouTube channel as well. So find me there. Okay, Lisa, what are we going to say to say bye to everybody?
May there be many more marriages for everybody, and don't kick the can down the road. Make sure your legal suitcase is prepared.
Amen. Thank you, Lisa. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.